Now, prediction markets look like alternative casinos in a lot of ways. That's not really our goal with Myriad. What I will tell you is from our experience at Decrypt, we are getting rid of entirely our Google ad units because display advertising isn't returning even a fraction of what the prediction market traction does for us. For the degenerative users, really the total addressable market is essentially boundless, right? There's 8 billion people on Earth. I think that the move for Polymarket is 100% the right move. It's inevitable. About 65% of our transactional volume comes from the crypto and financial markets verticals. By end of year, there will be parity with platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi in terms of liquidity. The massive wealth of users and liquidity that exists in the Asian markets is being underserved. We're not the hero. The hero is the content creator.
Hi everyone, welcome back to 168X. Today, we're very glad to be joined by Loxley Fernandes, CEO and co-founder of DASTAN, the parent company of Myriad, Decrypt, and Rug Radio. Myriad has been one of the most interesting projects in prediction markets, especially because it sits at the intersection of media and financial infrastructure. So today we want to go deeper into the bigger strategy behind Myriad, how it fits into the broader DASTAN ecosystem, and where the team sees the prediction markets going next. Loxley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you with us. So to start, I want to go back to the beginning. DASTAN, as a parent company of Decrypt and Rug Radio, is fundamentally a media group, but the way you've been building it feels much more closer to a tech company, especially with how you have leveraged blockchain and AI on your products. And Myriad from the beginning is not like just a standalone prediction market app. It's basically embedded everywhere, embedded into content and information flows from day one. So how did this idea first begin? And when did you start seeing prediction markets as a crucial extension of the DASTAN ecosystem?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story because the idea of Myriad was actually born in Hong Kong. Farouk, my co-founder, and I, who you guys would know from Rug Radio and his social presence, content creator in the space. He and I were in Hong Kong a few years ago. It was actually we were at the Rosewood at K11 having some meetings and talking. And we were trying to figure out the direction. Historically, I'm a tech entrepreneur, not a media guy. Farouk is a media guy. And, we saw that digital advertising and the revenue models, the business models around media were growing collectively as a whole, but margins and individually, like entities and companies were being compressed. And this was a big move over the past few years from impressions, right? This whole idea of CPM, of being able to advertise for brand awareness, shifting in people wanting to actually be able to attribute acquisitions to conversion. And when you're creating podcasts and social content and you're in the journalism space, distributing ads and information in a way that's, trying to sell ads in a way that's relevant to the information is really challenging. And we get to a point where users start to become banner blind. Nobody wants to be sold things. And so we started asking ourselves a question of what's really next for media and where does the age of information change in supplemental business units start to look completely different than digital advertising historically for media. So we were sitting, Farouk and I, talking to some friends, and one of the things that we'd always been interested in and always been fans of was prediction markets, and we just didn't have the resources. We didn't have the team. We didn't have the people internally to be able to build a prediction market. But a friend said to us, you guys should really just move your distribution information rails into prediction markets. And we looked at each other and said, this is something that we've wanted to do for a long time, but we haven't had the guts basically to just say, hey, we're gonna make this entire shift a complete transition. Farouk looked at me and was like, hey, is this something you want to do? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, you? And he's like, yeah. So we got out of this meeting and we called our CTO and said, hey, do you know how to build a prediction market? And he said, no, but I haven't never done this before, but we can do anything. And so we started hiring engineers in team who had experience in that space and could augment our staff. And so, February 2024, the Myriad project began and we kicked off. But great to see, with you guys, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan based. That's where Myriad was born, was right in your backyard.
Okay, great. Prediction markets is now clearly a giant game. Like Kalshi, they are reportedly around a 22 billion valuation, and Polymarket 20 billion, and a lot of funds participating in. So it's not a space that both Silicon Valley and Wall Street are paying real attention to. And Myriad's seed round also brought in a really interesting mix of investors like MoonPay Ventures, Aros, EBG, one of the best ventures in Hong Kong, and Sido Ventures, Verda Ventures, as well as high-profile individuals like Tom Lee, Lucanet, and Blondish. So first of all, congratulations on closing that round. And I'm very curious when you look at the group of backers, what do you think they are really betting on in Myriad at this moment? And what was a key catalyst that got them excited to invest?
Yeah, for us, the story has been obvious all along. One, the age of information, we looked at the age of like blue links, right? Look at Google and digital advertising, what distribution on the internet was before. The evolution of information isn't just selling ads against people's attention. It's how do you actually monetize and financialize the information that every human has in their head, right? If you have an opinion, if you have an idea, there is an inherent value to those opinions and those ideas. Knowledge is not free. So as we build infrastructure like Myriad, the idea is if you have an edge or subject matter expertise or knowledge in your head, you should be able to financialize and monetize it because there's a value to that information. And so every single one of these investors really sees that if you look at the world of tokenization, the idea of being able to tokenize assets and tokenize companies and tokenize things it's huge. It's broad. Like the total addressable market is extremely broad. But what really changes is when you change the asset that's being financialized or tokenized to sheer information, then really the total addressable market is essentially boundless, right? There's 8 billion people on Earth. And if the majority of them have access to the internet and access to even, at minimum, say $1 worth of value, they can participate in this market. So, the story that we've been able to tell and that we've been able to show through the distribution of prediction markets and event contracts into platforms like Decrypt is the analogy here that I like to give is if you think that the new Apple iPhone is the greatest iPhone ever created, and you think that inevitably that should result in the increase of Apple's stock price because they've created this new great product, you have to understand how, one, whether or not they're going to meet sales expectations and forecasts, right? How the profitability of that manufacturing, considering all global economics and supply chain factors, how that's going to contribute to their underlying stock price. Then you have to be able to onboard into a brokerage account or a trading platform, and then you have to understand how to trade the Apple stock, right? Are you going to buy the stock? Are you going to buy options? You can buy futures. You can buy, all these derivative options. And so the barrier to entry to be able to participate in financial markets is extremely high. With prediction markets, I can just put a question in front of you and say, will Apple sell 100 million iPhones in Q4 of this year or not? Yes or no? And then I can show you an article that says historically every Q4 they sold 101 million phones, and the Q4 before that they sold 97 or whatever it is. And now the simplification of I can participate in financial markets on the most simple level. Yes or no? Do I believe this is going to happen? Do I not believe this is going to happen? And I can participate in the ownership of these ideas, this information, this belief basically lowers the barrier to entry, right? Prediction markets change fundamentally the way that we engage with the financial markets, with information, with news. And that's the story that we've delivered to each of these investors who believe in the Myriad story and have backed us. And it seems to land with a very resounding success. I think when you simplify it to that level, it becomes very obvious. Like, oh yeah, obviously, right? Like, duh. Like this is what the future is going to look like.
Yeah. Just like you mentioned in your article, belief gets a price. I think it's a very, very good phrase to describe Myriad's strategy. Also, you mentioned that traditional media model like advertisement, I think it's broken now. And we have to discover other models for creators or media brands to monetize. And monetization is always the biggest issue for content creators. Myriad create a very different way, like the embedding strategy. You can embedding Myriad markets directly into every information flows. So like Decrypt article pages, or you can download the Chrome extension and we can always see Myriad markets even on Google search pages. So I'm very curious that how far do you think this model can go? Like Could this eventually expand into other forms of content like live streams, short form videos, social feeds, or even more personalized news experience?
Yep. The answer is all of it, right? And unlimited. The biggest constraint with prediction markets right now really becomes the liquidity. We can create, we can use AI models to help create markets that have clean resolution and have the ability to solve. But the question is, who's going to take the other side of these bets? There's a lot of interesting models that we're working on in building that we'll be able to deploy hopefully very soon, that would allow, for instance, let's say you're streaming and you have an audience of 10,000 people and someone else is streaming and they have an audience of 7 people. Well, regardless of whether you have 10,000 people that are potential participants or 7 people, with products like parimutuel betting where you're participating directly against the counterparties and not against a pool of liquidity or market makers, right, who are making a order book, the rewards and the participation are slightly different than you get in a traditional order book model, but still you open up the opportunity for people to be able to participate in prediction markets, and to be able to do it on their terms, right? Regardless of the size of the market, content creators will be able to create. But what it does is it gives content creators permissionless access to be able to create markets and to be able to provide their users with a way to engage in their content and not necessarily just try to sell them something that they're not interested in. It makes no sense for you, let's say that you were hosting a stream and you're talking about financial markets, to then have to run an advertisement to sell Nike shoes, right? Because that's the sponsor. That's the sponsor that was willing to give you money. Your conversion rates are going to be terrible. It's going to be bad for the quality of your content. Bad for your consumer, and it's bad for the brand. Instead of doing that, give people the ability to participate in an opportunity instead of selling them an ad, and everybody wins. And so I think the goal is globally to be able to have every content creator, to have every piece of media, whether it's Google search, an independent stream, or even a group chat with your friends, right? Because that's a form of media as well. You're in a group chat with your 5 closest friends, and the ability to deploy a prediction market event contract within that should be accessible. And I believe that that's a future that we're going to see very soon.
I'm very interested in who are the power users on Myriad right now. Like Polymarket or Kalshi, there are some institutions using prediction markets to arbitrage or hedge. And there are also a lot of retail investors doing sentiment trading. What are the users on Myriad doing on the platform now? And what type of the markets convert users the most? Like, is it sports, politics, or financial news?
It's largely the full, honest, and transparent answer is it's largely crypto-based markets, crypto price action, crypto cultural events.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to give massive thanks and support always to Luca Netz and the team at Igloo. When we launched the product, we launched it on Abstract. And we did that because Rug Radio, Decrypt were very crypto native audiences. And we knew that we had a ton of crossover audience with the Abstract L2, blockchain on Ethereum. And so we deployed with them and we targeted those users because those Pudgy Penguin holders, the Igloo core community was also Rug Radio core community. These are people, what makes Myriad unique and different is that while other prediction markets are fighting for those crypto native users, we truly are and came from the trenches, right? Like we were the degenerative users. We were the crypto punks and the Bored Apes and the Pudgy Penguin. Right?
We are all DJs, right?
That's it. That's where we were born. And so what's great is the strength in our markets right now is still largely in crypto culture, crypto prices. About 65% of our transactional volume comes from the crypto and financial markets verticals. But what's really interesting is we're seeing huge amounts of traction right now in these new products. We launched last year our 5-minute markets, our 5-minute candle markets. And the whole idea on this is instead of placing a prediction and having to come back in 30 days and see how that resolved, it was how do we create, knowing our core audience is kind of this degenerate user, how do we create high regularity, high frequency trading and give people the ability to stay engaged and excited with these short-term markets? What we're doing now is we're leaning into quite a few more high frequency 0-day to expiry type markets. So everything from 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, multiple hours at a time, even up to 24 hours in crypto prices, stock prices. We're actually doing Asian markets like semiconductors, like TSM and equities that exist in the markets, being able to trade those and having them recycled 24/7. But those metals, 7, crypto prices, with a deep integration and partnership with Chainlink, will be
Mm-hmm.
automatic creating and resolving these markets consistently around the clock 24/7. And we think that the volumes that we're doing there, while they're strong now, are only going to continue to increase. And we want to listen to what that core user really wants, and it is the ability to be able to trade things regularly and high frequency, and then eventually with leverage tools as well, right? Looking at
Mm-hmm.
HIP4, the HIP4, and some of these other leverage and perp deck style products that will be able to be added.
Okay, you mentioned that you have also launched on Abstract before. Earlier on, Myriad strategy looked much more multi-chain, but over time, like more of the liquidity, settlement activity, and markets have converged around BNB Chain and USD1, especially with Myriad Season 3. So I'm very curious what drove that shift. And Polymarket just announced a big upgrade this week, which mentioned that they are launching Polymarket USD to replace USDCE. I think maybe that's part of their strategy of migrating the protocol to their own layer 2. So what do you think about that? And how did the partnership with USD1 and BNB Chain help Mira stand out?
Yeah, so I think that the move for Polymarket is 100% the right move. It's inevitable when you have that type of critical mass and you own that infrastructure level, especially because of their integration with with companies like ICE, who owns the New York Stock Exchange. There's going to have to be an entire level of financial derivative products that are CFTC compliant, and to be able to build a chain, and host all of that, resolve it, transact it, and be able to be compliant, 100% is the right move for them. And I'm actually very excited to see where it goes. For us, our move is a little bit different. We're big fans of the team at Binance. Brooke has done multiple interviews with
Mm-hmm.
CZ. With CZ, he's been so generous and gracious to be able to do those interviews with us. But to be able to do that, and to be able to work with the teams at BNB and Binance, and the friendships with the guys at Easy Labs and Trust Wallet and all of these other products. Like I told you earlier, before the interview, I've spent so much time in specifically the Mandarin markets. A lot of time of my life spent in South China, in Shenzhen, Guangzhou,
Mm-hmm.
Taipei, Taichung, and running all up and down Taiwan and China and in Hong Kong as well. Our from the Rug Radio days, a huge piece of our focus has been not just on the North American and Western European markets, but also on the Asian markets, Southeast Asian markets, and specifically because of our friendships there, the Chinese markets. We have a longstanding relationship and friendship with the team at USD1, also evidenced by the fact that we did the interview for the launch of World Liberty Fi, Farouk, with President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. But we wanted to lean into infrastructure partners that, one, had a level of gravitas and validation that a small company like us could really lean on, but also people who had the same mission as us, which was to reach rest of world users that are being underserved. In our opinion, products like Polymarket and Kalshi are really catered to the North American regulated markets, financial markets.
Yep.
And we really believe that the massive wealth of users and liquidity that exists in markets, in the Asian markets, is being underserved. So leaning into that direction, saying, look, they provide the infrastructure that we need to be able to make sure that we can transact effectively, efficiently, and at scale, plus are just ideologically aligned. It made 100% sense to say, let's align ourselves with BNB. Let's align ourselves with World Liberty Fi and USD1, and go for a world peace model, versus targeting just one specific North American consumer base that everyone's kind of fighting for at the moment.
Okay, great. So we can expect that. I remember in your BNB Chain partnership announcement, Myriad highlighted a localized experience, like including Mandarin, suggesting Asia is an important strategic market. So when we see the localized feature very soon, how do you attract users in Asia and solve the regulation problem in Asia? Because, for example, like in Taiwan, prediction market is in the gray area right now. Yeah.
It's a pre-regulated environment in a lot of places globally, right? Specifically
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan, it fits in a gray area as pre-regulated. And we expect there to be guidance coming from all these countries in the future. The real answer on distribution and product is yes, like expect to see Mandarin product coming very soon, and not just Mandarin translation, but also when we look at specifically like mainland China, some of the markets that do extremely well for us that we've already tested in the past is esports. Massive engagement in esports.
Yeah,
And
like League of Legends. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like that's it. And so we'll lean into creating more markets in that realm. But in terms of distribution, really what we've seen historically that works for us and what we intend to do more is these friendships like Block Tempo. And also, a lot of your listeners and users might be very familiar with some of our closest friends and supporters over a year, but the Puke cast team. So, Puke Rainbow and Dudu and a lot of these native Mandarin speaking creators who have created content and been a voice for audiences across everywhere from Malaysia to Singapore and Thailand, Taiwan, China, even into the Korean markets as well, leaning into those relationships and creating not just these friendships and distribution opportunities, but creating economic incentive as well. We like prediction markets, like any exchange, have the opportunity to generate fees, and a piece of these fees should go to the people who are responsible for the distribution. So while we're willing to host the creation of event contracts and the transacting, we're not the hero. The hero is the content creator. And if you go back to our story from the beginning, that's what, when we built Rug Radio and when we built Decrypt, the whole idea was that there are storytellers in this world, journalists, content creators, and they're the ones that have the ability to influence and to encourage the masses to participate in new movements and new products. Unfortunately, platforms are hyper predatory and they focus on themselves. The reality for us is we win when content creators win. And so by giving them the ability to distribute these markets and to create markets, and share in the financial upside, that's how we'll win. And that's how we'll win markets specifically, like the Asian markets, is by leaning into those content creators, those relationships, and not being greedy. So that's the plan.
Got it. I also want to ask from the creator side. For example, our brand 168X, we publishes across YouTube, X, and Substack. So could a media brand like us eventually integrate Myriad into our content, maybe by embedding markets or even creating our own markets in the permissionless way to engage with our audience differently and potentially earn rewards from that participation?
Yep, like we can do that. We can do this today. It's so simple. So we have an entire SDK that's already developed, and you can integrate. And what we have is we have a content matching algorithm. So even on all of your content that exists historically, the ability to be able to say, hey, we're writing for the easiest example. We wrote an article about MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor. We will automatically be able to inject a market about Bitcoin, for example. And then we have full attribution and consumer tracking so that we can say the volume that you contributed through your distribution, if the fees are say 1%, pro rata to what you contributed in terms of volume, we divert, the entirety of that fee, that full 1% of distributor fees to you as a media outlet. What I will tell you is from our experience at Decrypt, we are getting rid of entirely our Google ad units because display advertising isn't returning even a fraction of what the prediction market traction does for us. So anywhere that you used to see Google ads on platforms like Decrypt, and hopefully future platforms, looking at your guys's content and platforms, anywhere where you would have traditional advertising, banners, ad units, be able to replace those with prediction market event opportunities and be able to generate a percentage of that revenue. That product is functional today and it's available, and you know where to find me. And anybody who's listening, who's in the media space, right, or content space, reach out to us. It's very easy integration, and it's very, very low lift, and it completely changes not only just the monetization, but the quality of page views for us on Decrypt have changed dramatically as well. People are staying on site longer. They have higher click-through rates and much lower bounce rates across the board as well. So the quality of engagement's increasing, the traffic's increasing, and of course, the monetization is superior to traditional ad units.
Yeah, if you're a content creator, look into Myriad now. Okay, the last question. In the seed round announcement, the team say the new capital will go toward product development, liquidity, and market expansion. So by the end of 2026, what key milestones do you want Myriad to hit? Are there any specific targets? And if we zoom out a bit, like for 5 to 10 years, what do you define Myriad success?
Yeah, so I would say one of the more user-centric metrics that we want to hit is historically, liquidity has been thin, and so the prediction size has had to be a little bit small. It's easy to place a $50 prediction on Myriad, but it's not easy to place a $50,000 prediction on Myriad, right? There's just not enough liquidity for it. Even $5,000 right now would break most of the slippage in the markets, and you would completely skew a market. After the fundraising and the relationships, the contracts that we have now that are playing with market makers coming up, you'll be able to increase the level of participation in each market. Prediction sizes, will start to increase. You can still participate on a very small level if you want, $1 here, $10 there, $50, whatever it is. But if you want to place $1, $2, $5, $10,000 predictions, that will, like, by end of year, there will be parity with platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi in terms of liquidity, so that all sizes are viable within the platform. And that's our biggest thing. On the 5-10 year horizon, right now, prediction markets look like alternative casinos in a lot of ways. They look like destinations where people come and they place bets. That's not really our goal with Myriad. We see a world where information and the value of information creates so much more opportunity in macro financial products, like structured products, insurance vehicles, everything from things like weather markets that allow insurance companies to be able to hedge and underwrite natural disaster, to credit default swaps, right? And looking at how capital efficiency and a lot of historical Wall Street products are prime for disruption and innovation. And having open source intelligence that is, on-chain transacting, having a low barrier to entry, and being able to basically crowdsource intelligence and be able to crowdsource financial hedges, like, that's the future of what prediction markets are and should be. It's not just sports betting. It's so much more. It really is the future of financialized information. And so I think in the 5 to 10 year window, it'll take a while to get there, not just from, an infrastructure side for us, but also public acceptance side. But I think we're moving there very quickly. I think we're seeing Wall Street and financial markets accept prediction markets for some aspects, and then the other aspects of what it can be will slowly start to open up and develop. And I think today, while the story looks a lot like Polymarket versus Kalshi and everybody else is kind of on the periphery, I think there's a huge opportunity for platforms like Myriad to rise up and create an entire new segment of the market where we all do something slightly different than each other, but that's where we intend to be, is comparative in size, although our scope might be slightly different than what you see on Polymarket.
Yeah, I think Myriad is very different on other traditional prediction markets. Users have to enter the market first and then discover the news. But on Myriad, users enter the content first and then fund the market. That's a very different way to engage with audience. And yeah, that's a very big goal, creating a new information market.
Yeah, that's the vision that we hope that people see. And so I'm glad that you see it.
This was a great conversation. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Victor.
Yeah.
Really pleasure to be here. Happy to come back anytime.